this is the reason why I knew it was a Byzantine Empire, because I was like, what? The Roman Empire? How did this, wasn't it a republic at one time? So I just got lost in like 3 days worth of just reading and watching videos on YouTube about ancient Rome. And I know way too much now about like a whole bunch of people I don't really care about.
So how's that writing coming, buddy?
Not very well, because...
And welcome to Person Behind the Pages, the show where we get to know the authors and creators that make the works we love. I'm your host, Nicholas W. Fuller. I'm a writer, a bit of a gamer, and on my YouTube channel I like to find fun ways to talk about both. But on this show, I'm an interview. And my guest an interviewer. But on this show, I'm an interviewer. And I'm joined today by my good friend, Julian Grajales. Hi, Julian.
Hey. Good to be here.
Thank you. So Julian Grajales is an up-and-coming writer. He's got 2 stories published in Promethean magazine recently. Congrats, Julian. He's starting an MFA program soon, and he's working on a debut sci-fi novel currently called The Black Mare. In addition, he's a political organizer, my college roommate, and much more impressively than just being my roommate, his work as a journalist was instrumental in getting a wrongly convicted man out of prison. So, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, little thing here and there.
Little thing. Kind of a big thing for that guy, but... So before we get into, like, all the ways that you're cool and all the ways that we've had fun together and all that fun stuff, I don't usually call you Julian, or at least I certainly didn't when we were roommates together, right? How did Julian Grajales come about as your pen name?
Man, so I guess I'll reveal here my secret identity to the entire world. Thanks. I was trying to keep that under wraps, bro, but I guess if you're gonna just put it all out there, might as well.
Yeah. It's all out there.
You knew me, or you know me as David. That's my first name. Julian is my middle name. And when I got out of high school and I started doing a lot of like local activism and organizing stuff like that, there was already someone named David in those circles, and David G, which is my last name. G is not my last name, but it's an abbreviation for it. And I didn't want to be the guy known as like David JG, or I don't know. So in that moment I was like, well, you guys can just call me my middle name. And most of my journalism and most of my activism is also like known under Julian Guerrero. But specifically when I started writing, I wanted to honor the side of my family that really helped me be an artist or embrace art and humanities, and that's more my mom's side. So Grajales actually is my mom's maiden name. And I felt like, let me bring those two together, and I like the way it sounds, and I think it's also about representation, and most importantly it's really just about honoring my mom, who again, she would do art with me when I was a kid, and she taught me how to draw and do things like that, and I've always wanted to like sort of thank both my parents for making me who I am. My dad was very like political when I was growing up, and my mom was more about the arts, but my mom was also super compassionate and stuff. So those two things made me who I am, and I just wanted to honor that a bit.
Love it. Very cool. And I also completely understand the idea of being in a large group setting, and someone else is using, in my case, there were a lot of someone else's using my first name. And so, yeah, when we were in college, you certainly didn't call me Nicholas W. Fuller, because that's a mouthful. But, yeah, I went by something else, didn't I?
You did. Sam. Actually, in my notebook, when I put this interview down, and almost like every time I put down like in my schedule when we're gonna talk, it's always Sam. And then when I see you, I'm always like, Nick, just doesn't feel right, bro. Like, you know, just. And it's funny because I'll tell cause I have a cousin, Nicholas, also, and I'm talking to my wife, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go meet with Nick. And she's like, who? I was like, Sam. I don't know who that is. My friend, the guy, you know, the book guy, that guy.
The book guy.
Yeah.
So in my instance, in our college class, we had like 100 people, and there were like 5 other Nicks or Nicholases. So I told people not to go by my middle name, which is Warner, but to call me Sam. And it's a nod to Samwise Gamgee, which was like my main gaming handle. And still my gaming handle is either Samwise or some Hobbit-inspired thing. So, yeah. And I'm totally fine with still being Sam to you. But if someone else called me Sam, I'd be like, who are you talking to?
Right. Yeah, no, there's a lot of history to that, you know? And
right.
I had quite a lot of exposure to hobbits through the Lord of the Rings. So when I saw you, I was like, oh, okay. It wasn't like culture shock, you know?
To be fair, though, I would be the tallest hobbit. But
you would be.
Yeah.
You would be.
Anyway. So you're currently working on your first book, which is great from my perspective because it means I get to like have this interview now, and I'll get to keep interviewing and talking to you throughout your entire author career. But it also means I didn't find you from a book. So, of course, we've kind of already alluded to that we were college roommates. And I remember back in the day, I definitely felt like you were so much cooler than me. You were from New York City. You were listening to, like, rap music, like, introduced me to Jay-Z and how cool that was. And also, like, Talib Kweli and Common, good stuff. I was wearing the backwards hat. And I was like, that's cool. That's cool. I'm in the beta for World of Warcraft, so, like, I'm pretty gangster, too, you know?
I mean, I was also in the beta, so.
Damn it! Don't even have that one. Yeah.
I went Alliance, so that was my mistake. You know?
Oh, gee, yeah. For the Horde.
Always for the Horde.
Yeah, but somehow we became good friends and eventually roommates. And I think a big part of it was our love of video games. We definitely were vibing on some of the same games, like World of Warcraft at the time. Even though literally our teachers were like, "Yo, don't get into World of Warcraft, guys. It's gonna take." You remember that?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
There was like PSAs.
Stay
away.
Right. Yeah.
Stay away.
It's trouble, guys. You have a lot of work to do, and we're like, I can handle it.
Yeah. No, it didn't work out that well.
No. So. But we did cap our characters, so you know.
Yeah. That was the real reason we were there.
For sure. I remember also back in the day, you used to absolutely school me in Smash on the GameCube, so that was like always a joy. I don't think I could like get a hit on you at all.
I mean, it was a joy for me, bro. I don't know if it was a joy for you.
This is actually true. This is true.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm still playing. I mean, I don't play as much, and it's one of those games where like you've played your entire life, so the skill that you developed in the first game just carries on to the next one, et cetera, et cetera. Nice. And not to boast or brag, you know, but I'm in like Smash Elite in multiplayer, which from what I've heard, you know, just from what I've heard, only the top 10% of all Smash players are, you know, at that level. So I got there and then I stopped playing so that I don't get kicked out of that. And this way I can brag about it everywhere I go.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
So what I'm hearing, though, is you'll definitely still school me.
I mean, dude, like, is the sun gonna rise tomorrow? You know, it's like one of those questions.
Wow, it's like that. All right.
Well, you know, so I still love you. You know,
we're gonna stream a best of 3 in StarCraft 2 sometime. Then we'll see.
I mean, I try to avoid traps, but sure, just for the friendship of it all, you know.
We'll do it. I guess we can't. I don't know. I'd have to figure out streaming from a Switch so that we could do both. But whatever. Anyway. Yeah. So speaking of video games, I asked you about your favorite video game. You said Metroid Prime. Solid choice. Tell me about Metroid Prime. Why it's your favorite?
It's so atmospheric. It's immersive. It's like one of the first times you get to play as Samus from that first person perspective.
Mm.
It's at the time, dude, I was so much more of a snob when it comes to video games and storytelling. So I was like, no, cutscenes are horrible. I want to live everything in the game, and there are still some cutscenes in Metroid Prime, but not that many, very few actually. And it was really good at like putting you in Samus's like fancy boots. I don't know what you would call them, but yeah, like mech suit boots.
It's like powered armor.
Yeah, there you go, powered armor. And so to me, it was just like, it was awesome. And like I said, it's atmospheric, and the story is like through the scans that you're going around this like alien environment, and you're scanning these ruins through your visor, and like the entire story is almost told through the visors, like the entire context and history that you're sort of engaging with. Because again, you're in like these ruins, these temple ruins and stuff, so there's a lot of history there, but it's not being, you're not being hit over the head with cutscenes explaining all that. It's kind of coming along, and so the pacing of it all was just great. And yeah, it really captured the essence, I felt, of what like a Metroid kind of game, like the Metroidvania type game, but it's completely first person and in a 3D environment. So that was just awesome. I've played it a bunch of times. I actually just bought it recently for the Switch because it came back out like remastered, and I'm telling you, dude, the gameplay like still holds up. Everything still holds up. Like it could have come out yesterday and it would have been a smash, So
I might have to pick that up.
Yeah, I recommend.
Have you played the Half-Life games, like Half-Life 1, Half-Life 2, and
I played the Half-Life. Oh man, I remember I got to college with you, and Half-Life 2 like came out like a month before, or like a month sometime during the year while we were starting school. And everyone was talking about it, and it looked awesome. And I never had like a PC with enough like power to play it, and so when I got to this college, they all gave us really nice, pretty powerful laptops. And so that's how I played Half-Life 2. But I was like, oh, let me go play Half-Life 1. And yeah, they're also really good, and part of the snobbery is influenced by that entire experience, because they do that just
right
kiss.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They did such a good job of delivering story, like not through cutscenes, but as you're kind of like walking. Yeah.
Totally.
Really nice.
I'm still waiting for Half-Life 3. It's coming. I heard it's coming. One of these.
Did you not know that Valve can't count to 3? That is common wisdom. They cannot count to 3.
Right. They do like 2 points something.
True. You're gonna get like a, was it Project Alex or whatever it is? Half-Life Alex, and yeah, but you get 2 Portal games and never a third. You get 2 Half-Lives, never a third. Have they come out with a second Dota or no? I can't remember.
No, I guess
it's just Dota.
Trilogies.
It's just yeah. They like duologies, and that's it. So there you go.
Yeah. Duologies, man.
You like that?
They're cool, especially if you're a writer. It means you don't have to write a third book.
Bonus. Yeah.
I mean, unless you're getting paid, because then
Yeah. Good point.
Good point.
I do want to say one of my favorite game experiences of all time is one I had with you. So this was when we were roommates, and we were playing co-op Splinter Cell.
Yeah.
And we're fucking like sneaking around, like running through this like safe house with a whole bunch of guards all over, and we need to get like some information, whatever. But there's like 2 guards that are chilling on these poor guys, these poor fictional animated 3D models. Anyway, but they're sitting on their couch watching like a soccer game, and we just sneak up right behind both of them, and both of us are like, all right. And we were like, we're sitting next to each other, but we're like whispering. We're like, okay, ready, all right, on 3, ready, 1, 2, beef, both of us. I was like, yes, we got them. They had no idea. I enjoyed that. I feel like genuinely co-op games are some of my favorite games.
Yeah, totally. Totally. I mean, they're also like couch co-op. It's just it's like a lost art. We need to bring them back. They're a lot of fun. I mean, I think some of my favorite game experiences are, what you've recounted, and also like other times when I played like, oh man, what's the name of that game?
Gears of War?
No. It's a cooking game.
Oh, Overcooked?
Overcooked. Dude, that game, awesome. I love that game.
I have like a love-hate relationship with that game, and because my wife and I play it with our 10-year-old.
Oh, okay. So you love the game and hate your 10-year-old? Is that how that works?
No. But
almost.
No.
Yeah.
No. But it is like, I mean, my wife and I'll be like, okay. You do the chopping, I'll do the cooking, you do the plating. And then Braden's like, what if I just put everything on fire?
Okay.
Like, yeah. So that can be. But it's fun. It is, yeah. And every once in a while we'll like absolutely smash a level, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, that's the best thing. I've driven my wife kind of crazy. I become like an actual chef, like a chef de cuisine, and I'm just like Gordon Ramsay, just like, what are you doing? What is this? What is this? And
you are an idiot sandwich.
Yeah, I don't go that far because bread is expensive, and I don't think my wife would even let me get that close.
Yeah.
To her with 2 pieces of bread, but
right. She's like, you're not doing that here. Mm-mm.
Yeah, but it's funny because she goes on strike every time I get that way. So I'm just like, you're right. I'm so sorry, baby. Can you go chop these onions? That's what we need for the next order.
Please. Yeah.
Please. I love you.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I really have a great time, and what's great is that my wife and I have actually like 3-starred like every map. We are pretty consistent about it, so
sick.
Yeah,
well
so there's
done.
a lot of yelling and a lot of apologizing.
Yeah, but eventually you get there.
Right. Yeah.
Nice.
Exactly. People get their food.
Nice. Well, let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to shift away from games, but you grew up in New York City, which obviously means your home is just like the set of Friends, right?
No, it's more like Escape from New York.
Okay.
That's what I want everyone to take away from this.
Oh.
Yeah. No,
So-
it's not at all. It's more like in between Escape from New York and Friends,
Right. Cheers. No, just kidding.
Yeah, Cheers, I guess. But even that's still too nice, No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I mean, New York City is it's my hometown. I grew up in Queens my entire life. I feel like, you live in a city that is so often portrayed as like this. I mean, in Hollywood and like culture, it's portrayed as like this one of a kind city. Like if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Frank Sinatra song. And then on the news, we are portrayed as like
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Exactly. It's just gutter snipes everywhere.
And there's no Han Solo, and it's absolute crap, right?
It is. The news, I mean, is absolute crap. but I think it's a city that's very politicized, unfortunately, given our kind of context that we're kind of dealing with in this country, in the U.S. Right now. But it's my hometown. I love it. There's really nothing like it insofar as, I've gone to other cities. I was actually in Colombia, where my family's from, in the capital city, Bogota. And I remember talking to someone there, one of my cousin's friends, who's like, so how do you identify? I know you're a gringo, right? Like someone who was born in the U.S. Do you identify as American or someone from the United States, or like a Colombian? And I was like, I identify as a Colombian American. But even when they would listen to me talk Spanish, like, I use like some phrases, colloquialisms that like other nations or other peoples use. Like my wife is Mexican. I worked a long, long time alongside other Mexican workers who I mean, just the culture just rubs off, or the
Sure.
words rub off and everything. And so, talking to this guy in Colombia, he was just like, "So wait, you talk Mexican and you have this and that and the other." I'm like, "Dude, my best friend's Chinese. My professor who most inspired me is a white woman from Hudson Valley. Like my wife's Mexican. I work alongside the entire rainbow spectrum of humanity, and it makes up so much of everything here in this city that it really, I mean, I'm sure there are other cities that have
Sure.
lots of, I don't like to call it a melting pot, but just a lot of different
Salad
cultures
bowl.
and influence. Yeah, salad bowl, exactly. We're all in the same bowl, but, we're not mixing together. That's politics, so we can get into that some later. Or maybe not at all here, but, complicated topics.
Right.
And still, I'm sure there are cities like that, but New York City is one of those places, and it's just very unique. And Queens itself is also one of the most diverse boroughs in New York City.
Right.
So the diversity is just like, laying over us, and it's awesome. I love it. It's just not an experience you're gonna get anywhere else, really.
Nice. Yeah. I remember visiting you, and like, it was I enjoyed the time there. It definitely didn't feel like I was about to get shot under the table at the cantina. It felt like a huge adult theme park to me, 'cause especially with like the subway, which is not something that I'm used to, but you can just kind of get on the subway and go ride to something cool to do and get back, and it was a neat experience. I think it's a neat city. And I love the fact that there's so much different like cultural diversity and so much culture happening, so much different like art and museums and all that great stuff that's there. Tons of good writing groups too, and that's where you're going to be doing your MFA. It's in New York City.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a blessing. Or I'm lucky. Let me just say I'm just lucky to be out here. But I like it when people talk about how dangerous the city is, because it also means that, the rents are not going to go up so quickly, which is very nice. I like the rent being low. And, there's also part of the process of like what I would call all this like internal migration, right? Where you're getting a lot of folks from other parts of the country coming to live in New York City. And so there's always like, there's culture shocks and clashes, and you can tell that things about the city have changed. And the one thing, I think the saddest thing about this entire process of gentrification is that all the culture, all the diversity that you would get from one community to the next, or from one borough to the next, it's kind of being flattened out. I actually listened to N.K. Jemisin, one of my favorite authors, talk about some of this in an interview with Ezra Klein. And she argued like there's a suburbification of New York City, where like instead of having this incredible diversity, this incredible character from neighborhood to neighborhood or otherwise, you're getting this like this sort of flattening, this universalization of experience that people want, especially people who didn't grow up in a city or in places as varied and diverse as New York City. So there is a little bit of sadness to that, I think, but still, the city is here. It's really not going anywhere. I mean, the poor people might be kicked out, myself included, but that's just, I guess, what life is like these days. And yeah, so stay out of the city. There are bullets flying. There are people dying left and right.
Oh yeah.
I have to shove corpses from in front of my door so I can get to the elevator.
Wow.
Most days.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, so
got some modest proposal vibes now. Anyway.
Yeah, so just stay out of here, There's a bunch of
just get the
cities.
fuck out of here,
Get the fuck out of here. There's a bunch of great cities in other parts of the country. It's a lot cheaper. Like, come on, do you really want to come out here and live in a box for $3,400? I mean, there's enough suckers born every day to do that, but don't be a sucker. Don't be a sucker.
That's interesting though that you mentioned like the flattening and the universality and the changing from kind of personality of different like neighborhoods. And you mentioned kind of people, the suburbification, and like it's driven by people that are coming in from people that didn't used to live in cities. All that I think makes sense. I was kind of like noticing in the city that I live in. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina now, and this is the oldest city that I've ever lived in. I've lived in, spent a lot of my life in La Habra, California, which is not that old, and certainly was, I mean, all of Southern California has only really expanded since like the 60s. And similarly, I lived in Cocoa Beach, Florida, which only expanded from the 60s in the space program. Whereas Wilmington, North Carolina is older than the United States of America, you know? So big difference there. And here there are differences in the neighborhoods. And it occurred to me that I think that a big part of what drives that is the fact that the cities are older. And just and travel and communication is slower, and so is development at the time that these neighborhoods are built. Whereas another place I lived at for a little while called Port St. John in Florida, it's not even a city, it's a census designated area. It's like it's an area that's sort of like too small to be its own city or town, but it's sizable, but there's no like personality between areas because it was all just developed at the same time, and it's all just like massive suburban sprawl. So it just feels the same. Whereas like in a city like this, one side of the city feels very different from another side, and you don't even have to go like from side to side to see the difference, you know? And I think that's like a key part of that, and I sort of like struck on that recently, and I thought that was sort of interesting, and I bet that's very true in New York. Like if you know, LA was built much later than New York City, and you know, certainly there's differences between the neighborhoods, but like I don't think it's at the scale of like New York City, the differences between the neighborhoods, you know?
Yeah, I would agree, I think. I mean, and just to be fair, LA, people lived in LA before the US even existed. It wasn't LA, it was part of Mexico, so there was some culture there already, you know. I think, but I agree with you. I mean, I think a lot of this country is so large, and there is such an effort to settle in different parts of the country, and that's at times happens organically, and at times it's very much like a, hey, come over here, we'll pay you $10,000 to take a plot of land, or you know, the Homestead Act type of stuff, right? So way back in the day. So yeah, but you're right. I think another city that I went to was Mexico City in Mexico. And my God, that place has been inhabited continuously for, you know, thousands of years. So it's just like the incredible amount of culture and history that place has is tremendous. And it's fascinating. I encourage people to look it up on the internet.
I went to Istanbul a few years ago.
Ooh.
That was amazing. You want to talk about, you know, a place, of course, that's been but not only has it been inhabited for thousands of years, but it's been like the seat of power for major empires for like a lot of its history. So you can go to the Hagia Sophia, and there's a spot on the ground where they used to coronate the emperor of the
Ottoman Empire.
No. Prior to the Ottoman, the
Byzantine.
Yes, that's the one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. I was just like right next to that spot, and I was like, oh my God, that's, you know. But like, so there's that part of the history, but then also very interestingly to me, you'll just be walking down the street, and then kind of through a fence in a like little church plot, there's like a tiny monument, and it says like, this has been here since like the 1721, and like it's like kind of cracking and falling apart and whatever. And it's like, are you kidding me? This is a piece of history that's older than, you know, again, the United States of America as an institution. And it's like, yeah, who cares about that shit? We got better history. You know?
Yeah, no, it's the amount of history and culture and history that exists across this planet is overwhelming. Like,
yeah,
I love history, and I love reading about history, and you could spend a whole lifetime just like reading about one country's history in a lot of detail. So getting through, the other day I was like, I got lost on Wikipedia, which is not the best, sources for history, but it's, it gives you like, like spark notes, if you want to do more research, you can.
Right.
But I got lost in, this is the reason why I knew it was the Byzantine Empire, because I was like, what, the Roman Empire? How did this, wasn't there a republic at one time? So I just got lost in like 3 days worth of just reading and watching videos on YouTube about ancient Rome. And I know way too much now about like a whole bunch of people I don't really care about.
So how's that writing coming, buddy?
Not very well, because, I'm getting, but I'll actually, the other thing I got distracted on even before that was on the history of the Aztec and the Mexica.
Oh, yeah. And that worked its way into your short story.
Yes, in a way that plays into the short story. But it's also, I was reading a lot about it. And specifically, I was reading about when like Hernan Cortez makes contact with the Mexica, and that entire, how that all played out and what it was like, and how these two, radically different cultures and people sort of came together in this moment, and not in the coolest way, unfortunately. And then I was like, man, why am I like, and whatever, because I'm such a big fan of history, I don't really question why. I'm like, why am I, flying down this rabbit hole of, Tenochtitlan and Hernan Cortez and Moctezuma and everything. And then I was like, oh, you know what? This actually relates in some way, because in this book that I'm working on, right, which at some point we'll probably get around to, there is a moment of contact, right? And so I was like, what would that look like? And I was just like in my head going over and over again, like what that might be like. And I think in some ways I ended up getting really enraptured by the history of Tenochtitlan, the Mexica, and the conquest, essentially, the sad conquest that the Spanish came over, and in that sort of colonial history did what they did. But it was just fascinating, and gave me some ideas and some insight as far as like, these tensions between peoples meeting for the first time. So yeah, it's interesting how, especially as a writer, like all these different things come into play for you later in ways that you may be consciously planning or subconsciously sort of like just dithering about. Right.
No, yeah, but you're taking the words out of my mouth. I was about to say, like, yeah, I think we as writers, all writers, not just we as writers, all writers have like this natural curiosity that inspires us in different ways, which is super cool. So yeah, and you're kind of talking about Tenochtitlan, Montezuma, taking it a little bit further south. You do visit Colombia every now and then, and kind of visiting family and that sort of thing. How does Colombia compare with New York City? Taking it back, talking about New York City, where you're from, and you mentioned you were in Bogota, and I imagine it's a little bit different than New York City, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Colombia, my family's from Colombia, both sides. My dad came over here when he was like 11, and recently, and by recently I mean 2019, retired and went to go back to Colombia to live in, the rest of his retirement out there and whatnot. So, for a while I was going like every year for 2 months, especially when I was a kid. And then it kind of stopped for a bit, and it was tough for me to go consistently. And it's only been in the last couple years, a little bit after since the pandemic, that I've been going to Colombia now like once to twice a year. It's great to see family. I'm mainly going to go see my dad because he's getting up there in his age, or he's, as they say, a little long in the tooth. And he's on this farm, and at times it can get kind of lonely. There's not that much family around him, but honestly, this is what he likes, and so So we're all kind of just trying to deal, but I do miss him, and he was, the person one of the parents I spent most of my life with. So I have a very strong relationship, a very loving relationship with my dad, and so because of that, I go more often now. And Colombia is a country that has been struggling to develop itself on its own. I don't want to get into politics too much, but there's a dynamic there that makes it very tough for countries in the global south to move ahead. And oftentimes it's because of the relationships with countries in what is known as the global north, or the sort of the industrialized sort of zones. And I think because of that, people in Colombia, one thing that I'm very shocked by is how astute and informed people are in parts of the global south. I mean, I feel like the level of education and awareness of the world is so much higher in these parts of the world than it is sometimes like in our own country. And there's reasons for that, and we can get into that maybe another episode. But definitely, I'm just always like in awe of the resilience and the efforts that people take on to get by on what they can. But don't get me wrong, Colombia is a beautiful place. It's a place where there's a lot of positive change happening, I think, in most recent years, especially since they've negotiated peace accords between the largest guerrilla army and the government. So things have been opening up, I would say. I don't quite think that improving is the right term. These things move very slowly in the global south, I think, unfortunately. But it is a place that continuously inspires me to bring a little something back into the writing that I don't think I would have gotten otherwise. And it's also a place with so much flavor and sazon and dynamism. One thing that I do on the side is I play music, and some of the music that I play is traditional Colombian, like cumbia music. People may or may not know cumbia. It's a pretty huge Latin American rhythm and sound. And it all kind of started in the North Atlantic coast of Colombia, the sort of Caribbean area. And I've been picking up this music recently over basically since the pandemic. And the sort of cultural gestation, the interchange and the exchange that I've had with Colombians, musicians, has been phenomenal. And it's, it really opens up your mind. And I really encourage everyone to do those kinds of things. Maybe you write and you love to write, but hey, pick up an instrument. Maybe it'll help you think about things a little differently. It might stave off dementia, but... side health advice right there. But it's also just a great way to look at the world through a different lens, through a different register of how things work and operate. And Colombia allows me to do that in many different ways, culturally, socially, musically. It connects me with my family that when I go visit Colombia, a lot of the times it's to visit my dad's side of the family. They basically pretty much stayed in Colombia. My mom's side almost completely immigrated over to the U.S. And so they're all here. But that connection with my history, my ancestry, it's tough to follow, when you're an immigrant or the child of immigrants in this country. So the only place I get that is in Colombia and with my family out there. So yeah, this is a long way of saying Colombia is awesome. Multiculturalism is fantastic. It's good for you. And I encourage it for folks who have not had the opportunity to leave the U.S. or travel too much. Do it. It's good for you.
Do it. I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. Good stuff.
Thanks for asking, though. I don't get questions about Colombia too often.
Good.
Yeah.
So, raised in New York City, We were college roommates together. After that, one of the things that you did quite a bit of was a lot of journalism, including a podcast called Working Class Heroes, which was super cool. And along the way with the journalism work, you ended up being instrumental into helping a wrongly convicted person get out of prison, which is amazing, super cool. Tell us a little bit about journalism in general, Working Class Heroes, and then how did this happen? How did you get into this situation where you were able to help this person out?
Yeah, totally. One of the first places I really developed my writing around was around reporting, writing articles about things that are happening in the city or social movements or just current events is what they say. And I was asked to write an article about why the police were getting extra funding after the mayor at the time had run on a reform the police whole campaign type of stuff, police reform campaign. And I worked out an outline, I put the article together, I did a lot of research, and I was able to make connections between things that I had not picked up on and that made more sense of why politics were playing out the way they were. And first of all, that was incredibly satisfying to be able to make those connections and put it together in an article that is coherent and is not rambly and makes sense to people and helps, especially at the time it was for a newspaper that was being mainly read by grassroots activists in New York City. So it was helpful to them as well, to see those connections. And I've always wanted to be a writer or a journalist who's going to have some impact on local events or current events and push forward reforms and things that need to be addressed, especially at a time when local journalism is really almost non-existent in many places. And you would think in a place like New York City where my God, you have every 10 blocks, maybe 10,000 people. There's a lot of stuff happening there, and it's just not getting that much attention at all. So local news was not really able to meet some of these things or, make these connections for folks, and being able to fill that space and play that role was just so incredibly satisfying and so helpful for my own thinking. I honestly think that if people really want to understand something, if they really want to check to see if they understand something thoroughly, write about it. And if what you write makes no sense, it's probably because you haven't quite made all the connections around these issues. And you should do some further studying or clarification to get there. And I went and I ended up writing some 32 articles over the course of a couple of years. It was incredibly satisfying, like I said.
Got your Hamilton on right there.
A little bit, right? But it was also I learned a lot, and it really sharpened my politics, and it really sharpened my writing as well. And the point about article writing or current events writing, it's not about being overly complex or pointing out overly complex things. It's about conveying complicated and complex subjects and topics through not as simple as in dumbed down, but as a straightforward and concise manner. And when you're able to do that, it can be so illuminating and clarifying to a lot of people, yourself included. So yeah, I did a lot of that, and it made me really want to sort of move into that role of being a local journalist and producing local news that was going to be helpful to New Yorkers and social movements here. And so Working Class Heroes Radio was a part of that. My partner, she and I did a lot of this similar kind of work, and so she had this idea of doing there's this sort of well-known, I don't know if it's an Instagram or if it's expanded since then, but it's called Humans of New York, where they do these very detailed profiles of just strangers that I assume it's like strangers that this writer is or Instagrammer is sort of engaging with, and he's able to get like very personal, detailed stories of these folks and their lives, and with all the respect needed, right, to deal or handle these stories. But it's just so touching, and it gives you a sense of the city, and it gives you a sense of these people's lives. And it's also history, right? It's like a people's history. And
great account, super cool account. Go check it out.
Yeah, totally. And it's ballooned into a whole bunch of other things and stuff like that. But so we wanted to do something like that, but also do like news, right? And still play that role of like helping reform movements and reform efforts to get the kind of analysis that they need to push those things forward. So Working Class Heroes was a part of that. We put that together, for like a year and some change. Actually, no, we had it for a while as like a podcast, and we were doing like narrative investigative journalism stories. Specifically, we started on like the taxi drivers at the time. There was a lot of like stuff going on about that. And then at some point we were offered like a radio slot on what is known as community radio, WBAI 99.5 FM. Tune in. Sorry, that's just, going through the motions there. And
old habits,
they're engraved. Anyways, and so we did that for a year, being on the radio, and that was just a whole nother different experience. Because one thing is like, you're going to sit down and write a whole story and just record it and edit it. And the other thing is engaging with people like live and taking calls and interviewing people live. And it's just, it's daunting, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And one of the stories we did, we put together like a Google phone number and asked people to give us a call if they had stories or tips that they wanted us to look into or to, investigate, right? And we got a call from this gentleman. His name is Prakash Churaman, who was at Rikers Island. He had been arrested when he was 15, accused of killing his best friend in a home invasion, and the evidence against him was very, very paltry, very like the DA and the police are reaching to make an arrest to justify being like, yeah, we did this, good job, guys. And it was, so the evidence was very little. Eventually, whatever, it's a whole long story. And when he called us, he was like, look, I just need your help to get the story out there. So we spent like the next 2 weeks doing interviews with him and recording it as best as we could. People on Rikers only get like 10 to 15 minutes per call every like 4 or 5 hours. So trying to do a long form interview with someone like that is tedious.
And Rikers, by the way, that's an island that's out there in New York City, and the whole island is just a prison, right?
Yeah, it's one of those like leftovers from like the medieval period, right, where like people are being tortured and stuff. It's a horrible human rights violation. If folks look it up and you just type in Rikers human rights, you'll get a lot. In fact, it's been mandated to be closed because of all the long list of human rights violations and really horrible damage it like meets out on New Yorkers and low income and poor black and brown folks more often than not. So it's very damaging. Anyways, we were able to tell his story, and it picked up a bit of momentum and attention, and we stuck with him and with the story. And at some point, he was given the opportunity to do this case from home, not bail, in other words. He was given the chance to go home, even though he'd been arrested when he was 15 and spent like from 15 to 21 that entire time imprisoned. His youth stolen from him, some of the most important years in our development, in our identity formation and what we want to do, were, he had to deal with that while trapped in a torturous, scary place that does nothing but harms people more than helps people. And eventually he got out, and he kept fighting his case. And look, the biggest advocate, the person who made most of this happen, is Prakash himself. He is a man who refused to negotiate and barter his innocence away, and stuck to it and faced very long odds and a potential future completely imprisoned for something he did not commit, and he just refused to give up his innocence and fought it out until some point last year in May, the DA, the district attorney, dropped all the charges against him and basically said he was free to go. And so
it's amazing.
Huge. And honestly, it was like the highlight of it's been the highlight of the last like 10 years of my life, besides some other things very important in my life. But this is just like, you just get so used to shouting at the void that when the void like actually responds, you're just like, what? We did this?
Right.
Wow. So
yeah, that's amazing. And I'm with you. I don't want to take anything away from Prakash. And, perhaps if it hadn't been you, it'd been someone else. But he reached out to you, and he reached out to you because of the show and the work that you were doing. And, like, true. You guys were able to collect that story in the tedious way, the 15 minutes at a time, put it all together, bring his story to the people, make a difference, make a, like, tremendous difference in his life, That's
totally
super cool, man. Super, totally. It's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't done much or any real article writing since that project. Unfortunately, we only spent about a year on the air, but trying to run a weekly news show that is doing that kind of work for like no pay at all, it's just hard. Yeah. It's hard to maintain. We couldn't stick it out, but honestly, if helping Prakash with that case was worth all that time, all those years, all those stories, all that effort, it was completely worth it. I regret not a single moment of it.
Super cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hear your point though you made just a moment ago about how like shouting at the void and you get nothing back with when you're trying to work on real world issues. And I know that that's one of the reasons why you've kind of turned to creative writing, because then you can have your own void, like you can mandate the void speaking back, right? You can write that in however you want. And I totally get that and agree, and it's satisfying that way. You can have your happy ending if you want it. You can make that happen, So, and I know you're going to start an MFA program fairly soon. So are you excited? What are your expectations for your Masters of Fine Art and Creative Writing?
Yeah, right. A Masters in Fine Arts. I'm excited, dude. It's taken me a while to get through college. Things get in the way. But I am super excited. I'm the type of person who is like, if I'm going to try something new and I want to get good at it, I do a lot of research. I read a bunch of books for it. I obsess over YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. And I've done that in the past for many things, and it works out. But honestly, the one thing I feel like I'm missing most of the times when I'm doing that is that sense of community, or that sense of like I'm not the only one doing this, and I'm doing it alongside a bunch of people who are also going through this process. That learning environment, that collective learning environment, is something that I miss tremendously, and I feel like it's very helpful. I mean, I know I've heard people say, like, you don't really need to do an MFA if you want to be a writer. You don't even need to go to journalism school if you wanted to, like, do that. But to me, the knowledge I'm getting, the networks I'm making, the connections I'm making, the insight that I would not get otherwise, it's just very helpful. And as someone who is a completionist a little bit, it's it's a nice thing to tick off my my checklist of things that I feel like I need to get through.
Did that?
Exactly, right. But yeah, I'm excited. I feel like I've done, I'm newer to creative writing, and so I've done like a few classes here and there with like Gotham Writing Workshop. It's mainly online. It's just like these writing workshops that you do, and I try to cultivate like a writing group here and there. It's not a continuous thing, but it's more like one-off type of things. And it's tough. So being able to go to an MFA and have that experience and talk to like masters of the craft and people who have insights that, I just would not get otherwise, is great. And I'm really excited because where I'm going is City College, which is part of the City University of New York system. So it's a campus, one of the most beautiful campuses of any CUNY campus. And it's like, CUNY has like 26 different colleges across New York City. So it's one of the most beautiful. It's in Harlem. I'm getting an experience that I just don't think I'd get too much at other master's programs. Like I'm going to be writing alongside other like working class writers of color who bring all this experience and all this insight into the program. And so I'm really excited for that. And yeah, I'm hoping to level up my craft. And I think the other thing that has been interesting for me is I've always liked to be like a teacher and educator. I love that environment. I don't think I'm too bad at it. When you're writing articles, you're in some ways trying to distill information into one place so that people can get educated about these issues or deepen their understanding of these topics. And so in some way I've been an educator here and there. So I feel like I'd love to do that with writing. And I think the MFA program also gives you an opportunity to be like an adjunct professor and teach like composition to like, younger students, mainly, folks straight out of high school, sure. Like intro sure. composition, creative writing type of thing. So I'm super excited about that. And I don't know, I'm thinking maybe down the line that might be a place where, I can expand my work history and
sure.
time, so I think that'd be great.
Super cool. That's like what you were talking about too, like wanting to learn the craft. I am not so much kind of the completionist. I'm more the person that's like, I want to do the thing, I'm going to start doing it, which isn't always the best approach, but, sometimes I can get away with it. But I did want to, I think it was this conference that I went to locally, and, I was excited for this conference, and there's some different, like, workshops and whatnot. And my wife was like, listen, I'm not trying to be not supportive, but, like, what is it that you want to learn? Like, you already, like, I like your writing. I was like, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. But,
I like your writing, too.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that, too. But I said to my wife, I appreciate that. And sure, like I know how to write a sentence, right? Like I can put words on a page, but like this is a craft, right? And I want to improve the craft. So I said, like, it's sort of like, I definitely know how to make a simple, like, card table, with like a flat top and 4 legs, and it can stand up and hold and whatever. But you can get more ornate with that. Maybe I want to like build a beautiful hand carved dining table with like filions and neat stuff, Right. And that's something that you learn those skills over time. So I love that about writing, because we can always get like better and improve, and that's nice, but then you can also like, you can still appreciate the card table if it's doing what it needs to do, and right. So I totally get it. I'm excited to see how it all goes. We'll definitely be checking in with you more to hear progress on your MFA program and your novel, and et cetera, et cetera. But what are some of your very interesting to hear the idea of teaching. That sounds super cool. What are your long-term goals with your writing specifically? Like, what do you want to achieve with your writing?
Writing a book would be nice. If I could just complete that would be nice. And I put that as a goal because it is just such a daunting thing to do as well. That
deserves to be a goal. There are way more people that want to write a book than people who have finished a book,
Totally. So that has to be there. For me, I want to tell stories that give people hope, that make people question the status quo, that imagines solutions to the like ever-present dark cloud over humanity for any number of issues. And I wanted to tell stories that, you know, really just, you know, brushes those clouds away and offers people an opportunity to be like, you know what, we could try this, or we should strive for something like this, or like, you know. So I really want, you know, it goes back to like
better futures are possible, right?
Yeah, basically, another world is possible, better futures are possible. It's the same sort of element of like wanting to write articles that help people make reforms, or, you know, improve our human condition ever so slightly, but slightly, right? And improving. So I wanted to write literature that did some of that stuff, stories that did some of that stuff. I want to write stories where, you know, spoilers, right? But Daenerys has not become a mad, like, mass murderer at the end of, you know, several seasons of her being a liberator. Like, Turns out I
think everyone else wanted that ending too.
Yeah, right? But it's like, we can't get it because there's this fear that, like, transformational change is scary and will bite you on the ass if you even try it. And that's kind of like, I'm tired of that trope, and I want to write stories that don't fall into that dynamic of what mainstream culture is trying to like get across to us, right? And yeah, I just don't feel like there's too much of it. And my background in, like, you know, politics or theory and stuff like that, and history, I think I can, you know, bring to bear on some of these stories, hopefully in a way that's entertaining and not just, you know, dry, like naggy, like I told you so, you know, type of stuff, which I really don't want to do.
Right.
And I just want to be bold about some of this stuff, and really challenging. But I don't know. I think, to me, that is what I want readers to come away with if they read some of my stuff. I think personally, like career-wise, or for my own sort of like future, man, what was this? There was a quote that I think Margaret Atwood said in her like documentary, which is on Hulu. People should check it out. And she's like, I wanted to be a good writer. And if popularity came with that, great. But my main thing is just being a good writer. And that's what I'd love to be. I'd love to be someone who can handle the craft well. Because I see the craft as like, you know, as like any other skill that people have to develop, and that you're going to get good at, and you're going to go from being a journeyman to an expert type of thing. Like, that's kind of like how I see writing, in a way. And I feel like I'd love to develop that craft to the point where, you know, it's impactful and people get away with it, or get away from what I'm writing with a very powerful impression on them. And, you know, like Margaret Atwood said, if there's a lot of success or it's super popular, hey, I mean, I'm not going to turn down popularity, right? Or a lot of people reading my stuff. But it's not necessarily what I strive for the most. I mean, obviously, I think every author wants people reading their stuff, right? And as many people reading their stuff. And to me, it's a little bit of both. I think I want a lot of people reading my stuff, but I just want to be a good writer. I want to be a great wordsmith, I guess you could say.
Sure.
For my own sort of like personal achievement, and yeah. And I think with that, you know, you can do a lot of things, right? If you're a good writer, you can do a lot of things. If you're a bad writer, you can still do a lot of things and still sell a lot of books. But, man, this was a horrible analogy. I don't know where I was going with this. But, you know, yeah. Listen, guys, I'm an elitist from the coast. What do you want from me? You know, come on.
The wordsmithing on top tier right now. Just kidding.
No,
you can tell we're old friends giving each other shit.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pride thing, and I think it's just, yeah. I've always wanted to have like a craft I'm really good at, and I think writing can be one of those things for me.
I dig it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think like that completely makes sense. And I totally get. Yeah, I like the way that Margaret Atwood put that. Like, wanted to be a good writer, and if popularity comes with that, then great. I think that, like, for myself, I am more like, my goal is to bring my writing and my stories to as many people as possible, right? Mm-hmm. And I am less concerned with, like, maybe like winning awards or that sort of thing. And I've been thinking about this, and I want to discuss this with you a little bit. I think it might be an interesting thing to discuss, in that I feel like those can be competing goals. And I think the reason why is because the audience is different, right? Mm-hmm. I think if your goal is to get your book into tons and tons of hands, then ultimately at some point your book is going to have to start like penetrating with an audience that doesn't necessarily read that much. You know, they probably read, but they're maybe not the crowd that reads like 100 books a year or whatever. The people that like live their books, you know? Right. Whereas if you want to win awards per se, then you are targeting that crowd that does like read 100 books a year. You're targeting really a crowd of like other writers, and you need to impress like that specific crowd. And that's a different job than sort of just telling an entertaining story, you know, because that crowd has read tons of entertaining stories, right? And if all you're doing is writing an entertaining story, it's not enough, even if it's really good. You need to be doing something more. And that something more can either be like, well, you have something to say with your entertaining story also, or it can be just the way that you told this entertaining story was so novel, so thoughtful, so interesting that it made an impact that way. But again, I think that to me, I think that that's sort of a separate goal than just trying to write like the most entertaining story that has the broadest appeal. What do you think about that? Tell me why I'm wrong.
You're absolutely wrong, because the depths of the human soul need to be explored. And whether or not people want to write stories or novels that appeal to judges at, you know, the Hugo or the Nebula Awards or the Pulitzer Prize or things like that, I think as writers, like, I think oftentimes the stories that are most impactful are stories that really plumb the depths of the human soul and the complexities and contradictions that are humans oftentimes. And oftentimes this is done through literary sort of novels, but I do think that, you know, speculative fiction can do a lot of that heavy lifting. In fact, I think speculative fiction is going to be more relevant in the next epoch of humanity, probably, because I mean, nowadays, if you're writing a literary book, and if you're not like at least putting it like 5 years in the future, it almost feels like this is an episode of something that's already passed, it's behind us. And, you know, and again, if you're not plumbing the depths of the human soul in those moments, then it can feel like, why are we here, you know? Or it feels old. And that sucks, especially because writing a book and getting it from your first draft to publication to someone's hands can take several years. So if you're not like, you know, a little bit ahead of the curve, your book can feel dated. So I think speculative fiction also gives you a great opportunity for like thought experiments and challenging and transgressing norms that you're not going to get sometimes in these like literary books that are so focused on like the interpersonal dynamics or the eccentricities of an individual, that I think can be boring as well. But I do think that like writers who do go a little further into these complex topics, and maybe you're not trying to solve them, you know? The point isn't to solve things for people. The point is just to properly portray them so that people feel like, wow, this feels real, because life is contradictory. Life is complicated. And I think oftentimes we derive the greatest satisfaction from, or understanding, or reason, or rationale from our random moments of life when we're actually trying to make sense of them and trying to see what impacts they have, like, on us in not just a superficial way, but in a deep way. And I think when we can make those connections, it's just so powerful, and really goes. It really, because look, we can, I think, write an entertaining story that maybe doesn't do these things, and people are still going to love it because of the adventure, because of those moments, or because of, yeah, this character does remind me of my best friend, or this character reminds me of me in these moments, and that's great. And I think the moment, though, that we go a little deeper than that, the story goes from being like, wow, that was a great series that I read, to like, I identify with this entire world, and I really see the complexity of it all, and I really want to see it play out. And you go from being a fan to, like, I mean, obsessed is not the thing that we really want people to sort of pull away from this stuff, because it's not a healthy trait necessarily. But I think that level of relatability is just so much stronger when you go a little deeper. And I think writers, I think writers are also people who are trying to grapple with these things in their own mind, in their own lives. And I feel like whenever I've been able to write stories that grapple with some of these topics, I feel better myself. I feel like I've also worked through some of this stuff. I mean, it's therapeutic in a way, and I'm not trying to force people to read, like, you know, my therapy notes or whatever, but but I do think it's in that way, it's a natural, organic process that writers themselves engage in, that when they go deep, they're going deep among, like, in with themselves, and in topics that the reader can also go deep into. And whatever, I think there's just greater symbolism and meaning to that, and it provides a greater sense of understanding of the world, or of these issues and feelings in those moments. And, you know, here's the thing. Write what you really want to read. Write the stories that you don't see out there, and engage with them in the deepest meaning that makes sense to you, right? Like, if it makes sense to explore those issues or those dynamics at a deeper level, great, because it's going to be helpful for the story. It's going to be helpful for you. And if there are people out there who love your book, I mean, whether it gets awards or not, it still has an opportunity to meet a lot of folks and have an impact on a lot of people, be it through traditional publishing, indie publishing, you know, whatever it is, you know, just get your story out there, and I think people are going to react. And that might get you awards, or it might get you a lot of money, because a lot of people love it, and it's not quite getting the awards, but who cares, you know? Again, the impact is the most important on the public, I think. And I think if you're writing for awards, you're probably not going to win them. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not writing to really honestly engage with the topic, engage with the moment, engage with the contradiction, engage with the character, then I don't know. I think maybe you're doing a disservice to your writing and perhaps to the readers. But whatever. It's also like, no one's obligated to do that. Sometimes we just want to write things that are just like, who cares? You know, like, this feels great to write just for myself. And it's a crazy story about someone, I don't know, surfing on the clouds of Neptune. Who gives a shit? You know, like, that sounds awesome also. And it would be great to see that even animated or something. So, and that itself is, you know, look, we need writing for all kinds of things. For plumbing the depths of the human condition, to just being able to just get by because, man, I've had a shitty day and I just need to, like, you know, I don't know.
You have really just come all the way around on this answer.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is what happens when you interview someone who's not even finished their first book. So
what I am hearing, pulling out of that whole answer, though, is what you really want is for people to be completely obsessed with your books.
Yeah.
That's definitely what you said.
And if they're obsessed, they'll buy my stuff. And if they'll buy my stuff, maybe I'll get a couple dollars.
Maybe. So, which is a great segue, though, because I would love for you to tell us a little bit about what you're working on now, your debut novel, currently titled The Black Mare. What genre is it? Can you tell us just a little bit about it?
Yeah, it's like speculative fiction. It's like a mystery / thriller / let's leave it at that, right? I don't want to confuse people.
Kind of a sci-fi setting, though. Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally sci-fi. I need to work on my synopsis and everything, but
You're like, I don't have a book pitch.
I don't have Jesus. On the spot, let me make this up. No, it's funny because I wrote a short story with the same title, and it was 18 pages long, so not the shortest of stories. And then I single spaced, right? Yeah, I think so. I think you're right, actually. And then I had you always hear that like your first novel is a little rough. It's the first time you're trying to make sense of this structure, this entire thing. Very few people write more than 20,000 words for one project. So writing more than that is just a whole thing. It's a whole beast.
Yep.
And I have all these stories in my head, and I was like, you know what? Let me take this short story and see if I can turn it into like a novella or something, and that'll help me.
A novella. And how many words have you written so far?
So I'm only halfway through. I'm on chapter 12, and I have like 77,000 words. So yeah.
So novellas out the fucking door.
Out the window. This is a series of novellas at this point. So.
No, that's great though. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a chonker, as what I've been told. But yeah, so it's basically the story is the main character, the protagonist, is a demobilized guerrilla fighter who took part in a uprising in a lunar colony, which is we've heard many of these types of stories before. But it follows the character in their sort of demobilization process as they are forced to basically be like an indentured worker, part of like a prisoner laborer who is being sent to different places to do contracted labor for mainly the state or for other corporations. And they're doing this to be absolved of their crimes and whatnot, because unfortunately they were on the losing side of this civil war. And so the protagonist, whose name is Eriselda Serna, is sent to this space rig on the reaches of humanity's like exploration of space and colonization, where she is being tasked to explore the depths of the Kraken Mare on Saturn's moon Titan. Man, that is a lot to say. I hope folks are able to follow all that.
Kraken Mare Titan. Okay, I think I got it.
Thank you. We'll share the notes later.
Yes.
Or a better synopsis at some point. And while they're there, their main effort is just to finish their last contract and get home. Mm-hmm. But things start to become complicated and complex, and they have to do a bunch of things that are very questionable, and whether or not they rise to the occasion or falter and do what is expected of them is the sort of the crux of the story, and hopefully we'll see how that plays out. But
a former guerrilla fighter has to do things that she finds questionable.
Yeah. Questionable. So you can imagine very questionable things.
Very questionable.
Very, very, very questionable.
Well, yeah. All right. I'm intrigued.
Yeah. So, it's been a great experience to just like write and to outline and to put it down and to have that what I hope to one day be an everyday, routine of writing. I go through spurts of it, and honestly, it just flows and comes out a lot better than I would expect, and that's been incredibly satisfying. But it's also just great to see this world sort of be spun together through your solitary clickety clackety at a typewriter.
Yeah.
So it's awesome, and it's been a great experience, and I'm learning a lot. And I hope this story, is able to, engage with some of these deep or sort of complicated issues of like work and work conditions and the dynamic between like employer and employee and things like that, So
nice.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I feel you. The current story that I'm writing, the current novel, just feels like it's working, which is such a good feeling. Like,
right?
I'm trying. Yeah, right.
So good, such a great feeling.
Yeah. Much better than the last thing I wrote, which was like, I have no idea if any of this is working. Anyway.
I mean, I won't lie. I go between those extremes. I'm like, this is great, and then I'm like, what the hell am I doing? What?
I think we've all been there, and hopefully, we'll fix it in post.
Yeah, fix it in post.
So this has been super fun. We're getting close to wrapping up. As we do, I'd like to ask you to engage in this recurrent segment that I'm calling "How Dare They."
Okay.
Where I've asked you ahead of time what your favorite book is. You said Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. Can you talk a little bit about why you love that book first and foremost?
Oh man, that book I love it because China Miéville is known for what is I think been labeled as weird fiction. It's like it's just very out there. Not to the point where it's like everything feels like some sort of like fever dream or whatever, but it's such an interesting mashing of fantasy and sci-fi kind of things, all in the same world. It's based in this city called New Crobazon, which is like just inhabited by very radically different groups of people and species that have to coexist and make sense of these things. It reminds me a lot of New York City and the dynamic that you get from New York City. And just seeing it come alive on the page and it's just interesting, and I love the story because it really feels like I'm being taken from like the criminal depths of the city to like the elites at the top of it and how they're all like conniving or scheming and these different forces and factions fighting it out. And it's just, I think Miéville has a wonderful talent for creating worlds that have a sense of a bit of coherence insofar as how like their societies work. Like he incorporates class, he incorporates race, he incorporates all these different dynamics that really make a society and a city like come to life. His prose is phenomenal. I felt like this is a guy who he uses some words. I'm just like, what the hell? I've never heard of this word. And I look it up, and obviously it's like a word that's just barely used for this thing. But it reads great. It really like puts you in this world, and just the dynamics of it all I thought were phenomenal. And I don't know, as someone who is involved in like social justice stuff, it had a lot of resonance for me as well, because like I said, you're just, the protagonist is not entirely someone who is like a social justice warrior or whatever, but they, in this wild sort of adventure that they are forced into, they're like rubbing shoulders with revolutionaries, they're like fighting the state in this way or that, and it's cool. It's really cool, and it's great to see like that turned into this like wild, weird setting and all this incredible history and culture that's just being distilled in this city that China is sort of painting for us. So yeah, I don't know.
Nice.
I like to
well said.
that.
Make a good case. Case. And now I have sent you a 1-star review where someone makes the opposite case. So I'd love for you to go read what I've sent you on Discord most recently. It's a 1-star review from someone on Amazon that did not enjoy the book. And if any point as you're reading that you really want to just stop and take a moment and go, how dare they? Feel free.
How dare they? Already. I didn't have to get too far in to be like, what?
Yeah, they titled the review, Can't Finish It.
Yeah, I mean.
But go ahead and read it. Read it to us. Read a little bit.
Okay, so it says can't finish it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am 2/3 of the way through this book, and I can't take it anymore. It is awful. Why all the high praise? I don't know. I really don't. I can't believe there are 2 more books in this series. Wasn't one torture enough? I give the author praise for his very unusual and descriptive imagery. It is truly unique and probably the only thing I enjoyed about this book. That said, he uses $1,000 words when $10 words would suffice. In fact,
I gotta say, like, I just want to stop you there.
Go ahead.
$10 word is usually the high mark that I've heard. $1,000 word. I don't even know what that is. Like, but anyway.
Also, like, come on, dude. You spend $15 for a book. You want just $10 words? I mean, I'd love to get $1,000 words for a 15. I mean, that's a steal, dude.
That's like, value.
Why?
Value.
Yeah, value capture. What is wrong with you? Why would you be like, you know what? This chocolate just tastes too fancy for me. It's just I think I want like crap chocolate because that vibes with. I don't know.
I wanted a rubbery Salisbury steak, and this is a fine ribeye. I'm upset.
How dare he? How dare they? How dare they? No, honestly, I mean, look, I don't blame them.
Sure.
I think. Look, this is the other thing about writing also is that, like, there are so many people that we write for and so many people we do not write for, right?
Yeah.
And this is probably one of those folks who's just like, not my thing.
And no one story is going to appeal to everyone.
Exactly. And writers, you should avoid trying to appeal to everyone because your books are just going to suck. They're just going to be superficial. You're going to try to appease everyone. It's just not going to work. And before you know it, you're going to have, you're going to have to write a sequel that you can't get your head around. It's going to take you 12 years, and you may never even do it. So,
you calling out George R.R. Martin? Or?
I said no names. I said no names. If the shoe fits, shove it up your ass. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. I love everyone. So yeah, no, I mean, I get it. I understand.
Yeah,
I don't want to read too much more because he goes a little bit into spoilers, and I want people to check out this book because I love it, and I think people are gonna like it. If you want to spend $15 and only get $10 words, I mean, read the news is what I'll say. They use very, very cheap words there, and. Yeah, I don't know. Look, I think people deserve polish. I think working people deserve polish, and they should get it. But
well said.
Yeah,
well said.
See. You can't appease everyone. So
nope.
Yeah, how dare they?
I just think it's fun to kind of remember that no one story will be for everyone, and yeah, we'll leave it on that. Well, this has been a blast. It's always fun catching up with you. I love our chats, but this has been fun to record this one and talk about everything. So thank you for joining me, Julian.
No, dude, it's always a pleasure. I love our chats as well. I feel like I, get a lot out of it. I'm usually happier for a little while, and I learn a bunch of stuff. So I really do thank you, and I think it's an honor to be a part of this series. Thank you. Thank you for that opportunity.
Well, thank you, sir. And where can anyone who enjoys everything you've had to say find and follow you online?
So you can check me out online at jgrajales.com. I believe my Instagram, I just made it, or maybe I made it a little while ago and I don't really use it, so I'm sorry. But my Instagram there is jgrajales_author.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And Grajales, Grajales.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking it out and checking out me and Julian, the person behind the pages. I hope you've liked this episode. If you have, give me that like, give me a subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what you'd like to see improve. We're only on season 1 here. I know we can make things better over time. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what you like. Let me know what you don't like. Leave that 1-star review if you think I need it so I know what to improve on, whatever, right? But if no one's told you today, you're an absolute legend. Boop.